So this is lesson 4-4, linear inequalities with two variables. So if you remember inequalities were these symbols right here. These were inequalities. And there was really 4 different ways you could write it. You can write it like that, greater than, less than, or greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. Okay, so you're basically going to have problems with these symbols right here. Now, I want to explain the difference between one variable and two variables. When you did the one variable problems, one variable meant you were dealing with one number line, one axis. So like, for example, the x-axis, this one, if I asked you to graph x is greater than or equal to -2, what I asked you to do is identify -2 on the number line, which would be right here. You would draw a circle on the number line. And because this has a line underneath it, you would fill in the circle. If the line wasn't there, you would leave it open. And then you'd have to draw an arrow. Now, this you would have to read. What does it say about x? What does it say about your answer for x? X is greater than or equal to. Greater than means you go to the right. And I think this pen is already dying. But basically, what we're saying is your answer for x can be any number from -2 or greater than -2. So your answer for x could be -1, or it can be +1, or +2, +3. Any number greater than that was an answer. And yeah, this pen is done for. So I'm just going to have to switch over. Now, let's talk about two variables. Two variables, you're dealing with two axes, right? The x-axis and the y-axis. Now, your graph is going to have to go on here. So if you notice, two variables, we use y and x, and we're using the model of y equals mx plus b. So guys, we're just going to graph this as if it were mx plus b, with our y-intercept being at -1, which would be like down here at -1. There's a number in front of that x, so I'm going to put a 1 in front of that. So my slope is +1. So it goes up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. That's the way the line is going. Now, this line, sorry, should have connected all the dots. This line has one more detail to it. Instead of drawing an arrow here like we did before, we're going to shade part of the graph. So you look at the problem. Y is less than or equal to 1x minus 1. Y is less than mx plus b. This is very important. Your y is less than. Because if you're working with the y-axis, remember, this is 0, this is 1, 2, this is -1, this is -2. But it's saying that your y is less than. So when it says that, that means you're going to shade below the line. Everything below this line now gets shaded like this. And that's the new detail in your graph. So you have to graph the line, and then deciding on whatever it says about y, you're going to shade above the line or you're going to shade below the line. So when you see y is greater or y is greater than or equal to, it's going to shade above the line. But this one was less than or equal to or just less than. If you see that, you're going to shade below. So above here, below here. So it's very important that you read this out loud. Okay? Now, let's practice this. Here's 2 examples. And I wanted to do one without a line underneath it and one with a line underneath it, okay? So, let's make a quick little line here. 2 graphs. Now, for this one, we're using mx plus b. Remember, we're still using mx plus b. So the line itself starts at +5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My slope is -3. Remember, over 1, so down 3, over 1, down 3, over 1. Now, here's another difference between a regular line and a linear inequality. This says y is just less than, not less than or equal to. So in this case, your line is an incomplete line. It's like a broken or a dashed line. Sometimes it looks like a dotted line, but basically it has gaps. So you're drawing a line, but a dashed line or a dotted line. Okay? Now, why is that? Because y is not equal to the line. So the line is not the answer. Y is less than mx plus b. Y is less than. So everything below the line your answer are all the points over here. Anything below the line, anything below here is where your answers are. The line itself is not an answer. This is different. It has the same starting point at 5. The slope is still down 3 over 1. But it has a line on it, underneath it. So this says y is greater than or equal to. And when it's equal to, you can just draw a regular line. Not a dash, not a broken line, just a regular line. Because your line is included in your answers. Because remember what this is. This symbol is both of these combined. That's what you get there. So the line is part of your answer. Now for the shading part. What does this say about y? Y is greater than. So because it says y is greater than, instead of shading below the line, we're going to shade above the line. So above the line would be everything on this side. So the line and every point over here is your answer. Okay? All right. The next is a word problem. So there is a club that is fundraising, and they are selling t-shirts and keychains for $10 for t-shirts and $2 for the keychains. They have a goal of raising $500. Okay, so here's the deal. Normally we would just say, okay, there's an equation. They want to raise 500 bucks. What is the total they want? They want it equal to 500. What are the things that they're selling? They're selling t-shirts. So I could just use T and K, right? But because we're using linear inequalities, tell you what, I'm going to make t-shirts X and keychains Y. Okay? So t-shirts are X, keychains are Y. So how much are the t-shirts? Well, they're $10 each. So 10X. How much are the keychains? $2. 2Y. Now this would be normally how you would set it up. How many would they have to sell to make a total of $500? But here's the thing. When you're fundraising, you wouldn't stop at 500. If you are fundraising money for a club, you would keep going. So instead of using an equation, it makes more sense that this is the least amount. The least amount you would raise is 500. If you can raise more, if your sales can be more than 500, why not? Why not sell more? Why not make more money? So instead of just an equal sign, we're going to use this inequality where the things you sell can be greater than or equal to 500. And now this is more of a realistic way of looking at it. Okay? Now, here's a problem. If you're going to graph this, right, this is not y equals mx plus b. So we'd have to change it. We'd have to make it equal to y. So we're going to start by moving 10x to the other side. Looks like this. They're not like terms, so they don't combine. And now I have to divide by 2. Everything divides by 2. And now I get y is greater than or equal to negative 5x plus 250. Okay, so if you're going to graph this scenario, right, you'd have to make a graph that actually is only concerned about the positive side, because we're dealing with money. we're dealing with raising money. So we're not going to go into negative money. We're dealing with positive money right now. So let's just say we go by 50s, right? So 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. All right. So 250 is right there. The slope is negative 5 over 1. So the slope would go down 5 over 1. So let's just, I'm going to keep it, let's say, keep it at 50. Why not? Keep it the same. So down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1. My line would go like this, and I just missed it. Okay, so what does this mean? What does this line mean? You have to remember what I said X and Y are. X and Y are two different things. So this is t-shirts, and this is keychains, right? So you can sell, let's just say you sold no t-shirts. You would have to sell 250 keychains to make this much money. What if you didn't sell any keychains? Well, you'd only have to sell 50 t-shirts to make this much money, right? So these are like the extreme values. Now, of course, they're going to sell a combination. They're going to sell a certain amount of t-shirts and a certain amount of keychains. But here's the thing. This line represents the goal. They can also go past the goal, so you would shade above it. And you can have more sales and make more money using different points over here. Okay? So that's how that would look. The next one, example number 3. So here, let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. Here they want us to write two equations for these two graphs, okay? So we're going to use as our model y equals mx plus b. Okay, this is our starting point and our slope, our y-intercept and our slope, but we won't be able to use the equal sign, right? We're going to have to choose between greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. We have to choose between that, not the equal sign. All right, let's start here. The starting point is at 0. If you look at the y-intercept, it's at 0. The slope looks like if you count it, it goes up 1 over 3. Yeah, up 1 over 3. So the slope is 1/3. Okay, now the symbol. Well, it can't be these because these are for solid lines, regular lines. So it can't be these. It has to be one of those. So is it shading above the line or is it shading below the line? And based on that, I see the shading below the line. It would not be this one. It would be this one. Because when I put this in here, look at what it says. Y is less than the line, less than mx plus b. So the actual answer will look something like this. Because you wouldn't see the 0 in the answer. You would just see this as the equation. Okay, over here, let's do the same thing. Let me give the options that I have. We're going to use mx plus b as our starting point, but remember we're not going to use the equal sign. All right, so starting point is at 1, so it's a positive 1 for the y-intercept. Just look at the y-axis. Where does the line cross the y-axis? The slope is going down, let's see, 1, 2, down 2 over 1, so negative 2 over 1x. Okay, now the symbol. It is a solid line, so it's not these two. It would be one of these two. So are they shading above my line or below my line? So just take a look at it. Is it below or is it above? It is below the line. So again, it's going to be less than, but because it's a regular line, it's a solid line, it's like this. Your answer would actually look something more like this. That would be what the answer looks like for that problem. Okay. And last but not least, these kinds of problems. So to really explain this, when we're dealing with two variables, but all of a sudden you only have one variable, we have to explain what's going on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make two graphs just to explain it. When you do your problems for your homework, you're not doing two of them, you're only going to graph one of them. But I want to explain why. If you were looking at the y-axis, that means you would only worry about this line. Normally, that's what you would worry about. So let's just say, okay, here's 0. I am at -2. Okay, I would have an open circle because, right, there's no line underneath it. But which way would I draw the arrow here? Well, what does this problem say about y? It says that y is greater. So I would draw an arrow going up. So what are your values for y? Every number greater than -2. So -2 is not filled in completely. It's just a circle. All the answers above it are where I want to go. So how does that work here? Well, this -2, if you're using mx plus b, this would be your b at -2. Where's your mx? It's gone. It's not there. How is it possible that there is no x, right? The only way there's no x, guys, is if they did this. 0x. If slope is 0, then you don't include that in the equation. So what kind of line do you draw? Well, guys, a positive line looks like this. A negative line looks like this because it's going down. A positive one is going up. But if the slope is 0, it's not going up or down. It is horizontal. It's flat. So the line you draw will be a line that goes like this. And it's not filled in because there's no line underneath it. Okay, now where do I do the shading? What does it say about y? Y is greater. So we're going to shade above. So your answers are all up here. All the points up here are your answers. And if you look at it, if you match it with just the y-axis, we're saying that this is not the answer. Everything above it is the answer. Okay? All right, so for this one now, this one's a little trickier. So let's remind you about the x-axis. When you did the x-axis, which is what you're actually used to doing normally, you would find this point at 1. You would draw your circle. You would fill it in. And then you say, okay, what does it say about x? X is less than. So my arrow is going to go less than over here in this direction. All right, now, how do you do that on here? You're going to mark your x-axis at 1 right here. Your line is going to go through this point, and it's going to be a vertical line. You're going to draw a vertical line that goes through x is 1. Okay, what does it say about x? X is less than or equal to. So if x is less than, guess where you're going to shade? In the less than direction. In this case, where the negative numbers go. So you're going to shade over here. And guys, that's what that would look like. Okay? And that's it.